So Dr. David Jockers is a doctor of natural medicine, a functional nutritionist, and a corrective care chiropractor. He runs one of the most popular natural health websites at drjockers.com, which has gotten over 1 million monthly visitors, which is amazing. And his work has been seen on popular media such as The Dr. Oz Show and Hallmark Home and Family. Dr. Jockers is the author of the best-selling book, The Keto Metabolic Breakthrough by Victory Belt Publishing and The Fasting Transformation. He is a world-renowned expert in the area of ketosis, fasting, and functional nutrition. He's also the host of the popular Dr. Jockers Functional Nutrition podcast. Dr. Jockers lives in Canton, Georgia with his wife Angel and his twin boys David and Joshua and his daughter Joyful. So welcome, Dr. Jockers.
Thanks, Bridgit. Great to be on with you.
Yes, I always love talking with you. I definitely would agree. You're sort of my go-to guy for fasting, especially mostly we've talked about fasting, which is the topic of your new book here. So just maybe start us off. What is intermittent fasting?
Yeah, for sure. I really think that fasting is the most ancient, inexpensive, and powerful healing strategy known to mankind. And that's a bold statement. But I mean, think about it, really, all of our ancestors, they didn't have refrigerators and pantries. So, when food wasn't available, when food was there, they ate. When food wasn't, they didn't eat, right? And that was, and we survived as a species. So we made it. Obviously, it doesn't cost you anything to fast. And when we fast, when we actually go periods of time without food, it actually turns on all these incredible repair mechanisms within our body where we cleanse and repair our cellular structures. And so it's very, very powerful. So all of us are doing some level of fasting because we sleep at night. When we're sleeping, we're not obviously eating. And so that's a level of a fast. But basically what we want to do is be more intentional with it. So what I tell people to do is really start with a 12-hour overnight fast. So if you finish your dinner, let's say at 7 p.m., and really, if you're able to do this in your schedule, it's always a good idea to finish your last meal roughly 3 to maybe even 4 hours before you go to bed. That's a really good idea. And then, so let's say you finish by 7 p.m. and then you just don't eat anything with calories until 7 a.m. the next morning. It's really simple. We call it a simple fast, and it's a 12-hour fast. And, I look at the time between our first meal and our last meal, I consider that our building phase, because when we start eating, we start releasing hormones like insulin, for example, that have to do with building. So they're building cells. They are replicating cells. So cell replication goes up. They are building, basically insulin's a fat storage hormone. It also builds hormones, right? So it builds other hormones like thyroid hormone and estrogen and testosterone. It's a very important hormone, insulin is. And it's a very dominant hormone. When insulin is elevated, its message dominates what's happening in our body. So, and that's what happens. So basically the time between our first meal and our last meal, I consider that our building stage. It's characterized by the hormone insulin. The time between our last meal of the day and our first meal the next day, I consider our cleansing phase. And that's really where our body is detoxifying and repairing itself. So, I just talked about that 1-to-1 kind of 12-hour building phase, 12-hour cleansing phase. It's a great place to start. However, most adults, to really get great health benefits, to really reach your health goals, you're going to need at least at times, at least maybe like once or twice a week, to push your cleansing phase a little bit longer, right? Maybe a 16-hour cleansing phase and an 8-hour building phase. Okay. And we can go into that, and how to do that sort of time restricted feeding and intermittent fasting, but spending more time in the cleansing where we're going longer between our last meal and our first meal, as opposed to, the time we start eating in the beginning of the day and the end of the day is really important for overall health.
Okay, awesome. I want to ask you a question about the 3 to 4 hours before bed. Are you saying that only because it makes the 12 hours, or do you like a gap between eating and going to sleep?
Well, for a number of reasons. Number one is research shows that you sleep better at night, actually, when you do that. So if your body's got to do a lot of work on digestion, it takes away from your sleep quality at night. So you're going to sleep deeper and you're going to get more restorative sleep. And we know sleep is when our body does the main, That's when really a lot of healing and repair goes on. So that's going to help with sleep. And yeah, it does kickstart your fast. So, it's easier to get to that 12 hours when we don't eat right before we go to bed. Right. So it
Okay.
definitely helps there. And that 12 hours really gives you a full time for a liver detoxification cycle. Usually it takes about 3 to 5 hours to finish digesting your last meal. And then you want an additional 8 hours after that to get a full liver detoxification cycle through your blood. So, that's roughly 12 hours, right? And, that's the bare minimum, I say, that we should be doing. We call that the simple fast. So if you're eating 12 hours throughout the day, from the time you start eating to the time you end, and then, then you're fasting for the other 12 hours, it's a great place to start.
Okay. Yeah, I've been kind of focused on that one lately because I think I was getting a little unconscious about when I would eat again. And I was like, okay, at least just don't eat, after dinner. And sometimes, David, like I used to feel like I couldn't go to bed if I felt hungry. And I'm trying to just reframe that in my head. And it seems to be working. And, I do feel like sometimes I do sleep better from that. So just like that small thing, like, because I'm usually just kind of eating out of, whatever. Like if you're eating after dinner, it's usually just for entertainment, right? It's not.
Totally. Yeah, it really becomes a habit. I mean, back when I was 20 years old, I was a personal trainer and I thought I had to have a protein shake before I went to bed. And then I'd wake up in the morning and I had to have like this big bowl of Quaker oatmeal squares with protein powder and milk and all this stuff in it. I just thought I had to eat as much as possible or I would lose weight. I would lose muscle mass. And that was kind of the common thought back, in the late 90s and early 2000s. And, it couldn't be further from the truth, actually. We really need that time for repair. And that's going to preserve our muscle tissue and allow us to be at our best. And a lot of eating is a learned response. So when our stomach is empty, or if we eat at the same time every day, let's say we eat breakfast at 8 a.m. every single day, we have a hormone in our stomach called ghrelin. And ghrelin is going to be released and it's going to interact with a part of our brain called the hypothalamus, which is kind of like the antenna of the brain. And ghrelin is going to be released when either we have nothing in our stomach, so the stomach wall, itself has kind of shrunk down, or at a conditioned time, like basically like the same time. If we're used to eating a meal at the same time every day, then we're going to release ghrelin at that time.
Okay.
And that tells us we're hungry. Right. But
Mm-hmm.
we're not really it's not like we really need food. It's just basically a conditioned response. We've conditioned ourselves to being hungry at this time. So if we're used to eating a snack before bed, we're doing that on a regular basis, then, it's really a survival mechanism of our brain and our body to give us this desire to eat at that time of night. Okay. Doesn't really mean we need that food.
Oh, and that's a great point.
Yeah. And so once we stop doing that, we retrain our system.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I never thought about this, but you probably have. There was that whole kind of misunderstanding about fats being dangerous for so many years. Yeah. And so we're eating more carbs and more processed stuff. And I wonder if that like lack of satiety or how you say it?
Satiation, yeah.
Yeah, it was like what kind of drove that? Oh, we all need to eat every 2 to 3 hours because we're all eating carbs. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was this idea that if you eat every few hours, the act of digestion itself is an energy demanding action. So we actually burn calories in order to break down food particles, right? And so the idea was, this is going to stoke your metabolism. However, this was really more of an idea based on like, thinking of our body more like a machine. The issue though, is we have this massive amount of wear and tear every time we're eating. And we also have this hormonal issue. So whenever we eat, we're going to promote the hormone insulin, right? And especially if we're eating more carbs, right? We're going to promote more insulin. When insulin's elevated in our bloodstream, it stops fat burning. We can no longer burn fat, and it tells our body to store fat. So it says store fat, don't burn fat, store fat, and it turns on inflammation. And so if we're eating every few hours, and actually, believe it or not, the average individual, if you think about it, like the average individual might only eat 3 meals, but then they will go and they'll have like, a small handful of cashews, or they'll drink like a kombucha or something like that. If you're just constantly consuming foods throughout the day that have calories in them, you are constantly keeping insulin stoked. And really, if we want to heal and repair, and we want to burn fat for fuel, and we want to heal at a high level, we want to turn on something called cellular autophagy, where our body actually breaks down and recycles older damaged cellular organelles, older damaged mitochondria, and replaces them with new, healthier mitochondria. If we want to turn that on, we need periods of time with very low insulin. And the best way to get very low insulin, we could certainly do like a lower carbohydrate diet. And for many people, that can be very effective. However, I think the best way is just periods of time without any consuming food. Okay. And doing that, it's going to really drop insulin. Now we're going to get this great cellular healing that's going to take place inside of our system.
Okay, perfect. So you mentioned earlier that at least once or twice a week to do a 16-hour fast.
Yep.
Why is that?
Yeah, for sure. So, and this is kind of really where I like to start with people. And, Bridgit, you would be like probably the most challenging demographic because you're young enough, you're still in your menstrual cycle, reproductive years, and you're very lean and you're active and you have a business that you're busy with. And obviously stress comes with that. And so fasting itself is a stressor if we have not regularly done fasting, right? Any sort of change is a stressor, kind of like exercise would be a stressor, right? If you haven't exercised and then you start exercising, it's stressful. And if you train really hard every single day, like let's say it's January 1st, you haven't exercised in 9 months and you're like, okay, I'm going to exercise really intensely now. I'm going to get in shape. And so you start doing that. You're going to be really sore. It's going to be really uncomfortable. Okay. Instead, you want to pace yourself, right? You want to gradually progress and you want to have rest days in between so you can recover. And over time, if you do that, you're going to get more fit. You're going to be able to handle more exercise stress and get stronger and more resilient. We all understand that idea from exercise. Well, it's kind of the same thing with fasting. When you first start fasting, it's a stressor because it's new. Your body's used to having a continuous hit of sugar, right? And fuel coming into your system. And now all of a sudden that's taken away. That's going to elevate some stress hormones. Okay. So great place to start would be do the 12-hour fast. Okay. Then when you wake up in the morning, hydrate your body really well. I recommend, we're all dehydrated when we first wake up because we've been breathing out water vapor. So we all need water. And I also recommend some electrolytes. So you can put a little pinch of salt in your water and doing like some warm water, like warm lemon water or something like that, or herbal tea in the morning can be a really good idea. If you do well with coffee, that's fine. You do some black coffee, but also do some water on top of that and hydrate well. I recommend, 16 of ideally really getting yourself up to almost 32 ounces of water before you even think about food. And if you start with that in the beginning, if you're not used to drinking water in the morning, it's going to be really hard for you to get like 8 to 12 ounces of water down. And it's going to suppress ghrelin because again, that hunger hormone comes out when we have nothing in our stomach. So if you fill your stomach up with water, now the stomach walls stretch, it inhibits ghrelin and you no longer feel hungry. Okay. And then you're just kind of sipping on that water. You're drinking that in the morning as you get going with your day. Okay. And pretty easy to fast for 14 hours at that point.
Okay.
And then you may even be able to push that up to 16 hours. Okay. 16 hours is what we call a strong fast. Okay. And it's a real popular fasting mechanism, a 16-8. You eat your meals in an 8-hour eating window. So that could be from like 10 a.m. to 6. And then you fast from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. the next day as an example of that. Okay. So 16-8. And that would be, you're spending twice as much time in that cleansing phase as you are in building, right? Okay. And that's a really good sweet spot right there. Now, depending on the individual and their stress load, I would say for most men can go right into like a 16-hour fast on a daily basis and do great. In fact, they'll feel amazing, especially after about 5 to 7 days, your body gets really adapted to it. The first 3 days or so, probably the hardest because, again, your body's got to adapt. After about 5 days or so, you're pretty well adapted to it. And most men tell me they actually feel great during that fasting period. Now, they may still have cravings from time to time. It might be, a mental, emotional thing. They want a dopamine hit. We release dopamine when we eat. and that makes us feel good, right? And so perhaps there's, a mental emotional thing. However, most men just feel cleaner. They feel healthier. They start to notice that they're burning fat better, that they have better energy and mental clarity as they start to do this. Again, the most challenging demographic I found are very lean women in their menstrual cycle, right? And so there are, a couple different strategies that we'll do. One is called a crescendo fast, where we do the 16-hour fast, but only 2 days a week, non-consecutive days. So think about it like exercise. So you exercise on Monday, get a great workout in, okay? But then we take 2 rest days, and then we come back and hit it again on Thursday, right? So it's kind of like that with fasting. So we're doing the 16-hour fast, which is a stressor on the body, but it's stressing us in a good direction. It's called a hormetic stressor, meaning it stresses our body, but it makes us more energy efficient and more metabolically flexible. We get better at burning our own body fat for fuel. When you burn fat for fuel, fat is very clean energy source, as opposed to burning sugar. When we're burning sugar, we produce a ton of oxidative stress and inflammation. When we burn fat, we produce a lot less inflammation and oxidative stress. So even if you're lean and you're like, I don't want to lose any weight, you still want to be a very good fat burner because you're producing less inflammation, less oxidative stress. What does that mean? That means you're going to age slower. That means your brain's going to be healthier. It's going to be, you're going to be able to think sharper and quicker and have a better memory. You're going to have better energy levels. You are going to have healthier skin, right? So you think about all those different areas, less pain in your body. That's what's going to happen when you burn fat for fuel. So we want to have that energy efficiency and that metabolic flexibility. So we'll do it 2 days a week, non-consecutive days, because again, we don't want to overwhelm the system with stress, but we do want to push the system. We do want to challenge the system so it gets better at burning fat for fuel. And we also, when we fast like that, our body starts to create healthier mitochondria. Mitochondria will produce the energy within every cell of our body. The healthier our mitochondria, the healthier our body is, the healthier we're going to age, the more energy we're going to have, the better brain health we're going to have. We have 10,000 mitochondria within every nerve cell of our body, right? So muscle cells have about 1,000 or so. Brain cells have 10,000. Cardiac, our heart cells have about 5,000 mitochondria. Liver cells have 2,000 to 3,000 mitochondria per cell. So, you think about it, the healthier, as we start to stress the mitochondria, and fasting creates something called mitochondrial. Well, it creates something called mitophagy, where the mitochondria break themselves down, the damaged ones, and recycle themselves and create new mitochondria. And it also stimulates something called mitochondrial biogenesis, which means the formation of new mitochondria. So when we have new and healthier mitochondria within these cells of our body, they start to function significantly better. The best way to increase those mitochondria, fasting. Fasting is the best way. Number 2 is exercise, right? So those are the top 2 ways. So yeah, we want to push the system. So again, 16 hours, 2 days a week. And ideally in the beginning, as the body's starting to adapt, those would be non-exercise days. We might exercise on our other days when we have a longer eating window, like a 12-hour eating window. So that's where we'll start, and then kind of see how the person feels. We do that for, let's say, a week or 2. And if they're feeling good, then we'll do 16-hour fast every other day. So it's like an alternate day, 16-hour fast. And we also may want to implement exercise at the end of a fast, right? And this is a really great sign of your metabolic efficiency. This is a true test of good health. We want to be really metabolically flexible and metabolically efficient. Okay. Metabolic flexibility means good at burning either sugar or fat, depending on the environment, right? So if you eat food, right, and blood sugar goes up, you're good at utilizing that sugar and creating energy. Or if you're exercising at a really high intensity, you need to use sugar because sugar is a quick fuel to produce energy. So you're good at that, but you're also good at burning fat. So when you have enough oxygen, you're sitting down, relaxing, you're good at burning fat. Okay. When you're in between meals, you're good at using your fat for fuel. All right. If after 3 or 4 hours between meals, you get irritable, you have hypoglycemia, you are having a headache, nausea, cravings, that's a sign you're metabolically inflexible, right? Your body's not able to tap into your body fat. It's dependent upon sugar. So we don't want to be there, right? So a really great test is can you fast for 16 hours? Okay, now you're drinking water, you're staying hydrated, you can take salts, right, to get some minerals in. But then also right at the end of that, get a great workout in, right?
Okay. Yeah, we had that question earlier
Yep.
from
And
Lynn,
that's
I
a really
think.
great test
Yeah.
because
Okay.
now we don't have, we still have stored sugar called glycogen in our muscles and our liver, but we also have to depend on our own body fat. And our body has to be good at increasing blood sugar from, the glycogen in the liver and the muscles, right? So we've got to be good at those things. And that's a great test of metabolic flexibility. And as we start to get better at that, exercising in a fasted state, our body becomes even more energy efficient.
Wow.
It stresses those mitochondria even more. So they get more and more efficient. We actually double, triple our mitochondria levels, and they become healthier and more stress resilient. So it's a really great place to be.
Yeah, KB, we'll put these up on YouTube afterwards. And yeah, also David's got his book if you want to just have for me, it's a motivator. And I think my audience is the same way to understand something, right? So,
Yeah.
To just be like, oh yeah, all these things are happening in my body right now. So it's really great. You mentioned on the menstrual cycle, women who are still cycling, and you said we could increase potentially to every other day, but do you recommend while you're having your period, you not fast, or could you still fast?
So there is actually and I do discuss this in my book, Menstrual Cycle, Feast, Famine Cycling. So basically right before ovulation and right before the menstrual cycle, your body's really building a lot of hormones, right? So roughly, basically if you take day one is the first day of your period, all right, in a menstrual cycle. And it's usually like a 28-day cycle. So the average person's 28-day cycle. Day 14 is typically your ovulation day. Now there could be some variation depending on the individual. However, roughly what I say is between day one, so when you first start menstruating, okay, that's actually a really great time to start fasting, believe it or not, right?
Oh,
So
really?
day one
Okay.
to roughly day 10 to 12 is a really good time for fasting. So for if you wanted to do a 3-day water or bone broth fast or 5-day fast, it's actually a really good time because you're not building hormones in that period of time. Now, right before ovulation, again, ovulation's day 14. So roughly day 11 through day 17, okay, to be on the safe side, I say that's a great time for feasting. So that would be a great time for a higher carb diet, right? Low carb diet, day 1 through 10, right, of your menstrual cycle. Day 11 through 17, have higher carbs, healthy carbs, ideally, right? So the, getting sweet potatoes and butternut squash and fruit and carrots and beets and things like that, right? Having more of those root vegetables, it's a great time for that. Then day 17 through day 22, great time to go low carb again. Okay. You're not building hormones. It's a great time to now start cleansing your body, to improve your insulin sensitivity and get your body more metabolically flexible during that period of time. So low carb, intermittent fasting, maybe even doing a 1-day fast or an extended fast if you wanted to, at some point during that period. Now, the week before, your menstrual cycle, so that would be roughly day 22 through 28. Now, again, you're back in that feast mode, right? Where by feast mode, what I consider that would be eating a higher amount of carbohydrates, because that's going to produce more insulin. You're going to produce more insulin during that period of time. And insulin, again, is a building hormone. It's telling the body to build. It's creating cell division. It's driving up inflammation. It's creating more estrogen, more progesterone, right? Things like that. So during that period of time, most women tell me they have more cravings the week before their menstrual cycle. Why is that? The body wants more insulin. So it's building those hormones. So that's when, you're feasting. So you might increase your calories, your overall calories. You might eat till you're fully satiated, right? Increase your calories during that period of time, eat more carbs. And then, so you're feast famine cycling basically through that 28-day cycle. So again, to summarize that, day 1, which would be the start of your period, okay, day 1 through 10 is a great period of time to be on a low carb diet, to practice intermittent fasting, and maybe even extended fasting if you feel like it, or a partial fast. If you want to do a partial fast, like a fasting mimicking diet or bone broth or green juice fast or something like that.
Okay.
That's a great time for it. Day 11 through 17 is a really good time for eating more calories and more carbs and protein. Great time for that. Day 18 through, or roughly 17 through 22, somewhere in that range. Okay. About 2 days after ovulation. Really good time for low carb again, right? Regain that insulin sensitivity, get more autophagy during that period of time, more cell healing, more cell cleanup. And then day 22 through 28, great time for feasting. Okay. Build up those hormones again.
Perfect. Yeah, and it may sound like when we verbalize this, it's complicated, but when you're going through it in your body, you can kind of tune into it and like kind of feel those cues where you're building or kind of resting. And I mentioned in the chat, if you want to learn more about the stages of your cycle, this is a great book, Woman Code by Alyssa Vitti. Yeah, and then we had a couple more questions come up. Kirsten was saying, can you take supplements and medication during fasting?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are some supplements that I think are totally fine, like adaptogenic herbs, I think are great. Ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng, holy basil, medicinal mushrooms, all really great. You can totally take those while you're fasting. Things you would want to not take while you're fasting would be things like fish oil, vitamin D, fat-soluble nutrients in general. Also, actually, believe it or not, folate and B12. Folate particularly inhibits autophagy. So that is your vitamin B9. So that would be better to take, during a building period, right? So during meal times, that would be a better supplement to take and to avoid that away from meals. The other B vitamins tend to be fine, right? So if you're taking like some B6 or something like that, that shouldn't be an issue. But your fat soluble nutrients, vitamin A, D, E, and K, those would all be better to take with meals. Omega-3s, of course, if you're taking like digestive enzymes or betaine HCl, of course, those are only taken with meals. And then something like vitamin C, you can take away, during a fasting period. Probiotics are fine during a fasting period. If you're doing an extended fast, I don't think there's really a need for probiotics because you're not overall providing a feeding period. However, if you're just doing intermittent fasting, like eating in an 8-hour window or a 6-hour window, totally fine to take probiotics because they're going to get the fuel that they need during your building phase. So anyways, yeah, those are fine. And then medications, depending on the medication, some medications, people feel nauseous taking away from meals. So you might want to take that while you're eating. Also some minerals like zinc, for example, is best to take with meals. Iron, if you're taking iron, it's best to take that with a meal. Magnesium usually is well tolerated away from meals. You can take that and that's fine during your fast. So I think that's pretty much a general recommendation. Now, if you're doing an extended fast and you are on medications, it's probably better to do some level of like a partial fast, right? Again, there's like a fasting mimicking diet or a bone broth fast or a green juice fast. There's a whole bunch of different mechanisms, different partial fasts. I go through all of those in my book. And those are good for people that are on medications because actually doing that for a 5-day period, like for example, if you drop your calories into roughly, less than 40% of your normal calorie load. So a typical partial fast is usually somewhere between 20 to 40% of your normal calories. Most people need roughly around 2,000 calories, the average person. Some people need more, depending on, their sex. Like men typically need more. The larger you are, more muscle mass, more active you are, you're going to need more calories. But let's say the average individual needs about 2,000 calories. So doing a fast where you're consuming roughly 400 to maybe up to 800 calories for, let's say, 5 to at most 7-day period of time. The research has actually shown that it will dramatically increase autophagy, right? So again, that's that cellular healing that takes place. It will drive up stem cell production. So you get the new young embryonic stem cells, really drive down inflammation in your body, improve your insulin sensitivity. So you'll get all these incredible benefits from that. Now, you don't want a low calorie diet for a long period of time, because then it can create, a starvation period, and it can create hormone dysfunction. So after that, you refeed, and there's a whole process of refeeding. I go through all that in my book.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah. So
Okay.
my book, really, I break down intermittent fasting, all the best strategies for that, how to move into it, how to get the best results with it, how to phase it in and out. And, I have a fasting strength questionnaire in there, which helps you understand that you take this little quiz, helps you understand if you should push your fast a little bit longer. Like, let's say you're doing good with the 16-hour fast. The questionnaire will let you know if you can graduate to, let's say, an 18-hour fast, right? To get even more cell healing, right? Or if you should back it off a little bit, right? So it helps with that. I also go through partial fasting strategies, all the best partial fasting strategies. And then I also go through extended fasting, 3-day, 5-day water fasts, what you're going to experience during that period of time, how to troubleshoot challenges that occur, and how to make sure you get the best results, and then how to refeed, how to prepare, and then how to refeed afterwards. Okay,
perfect. Lynn asked on the Q&A, she's in her 50s going through menopause, any adjustments for her?
After a woman stops with her menstrual cycle, they tend to be more insulin resistant. And so therefore fasting becomes even more important. Okay. Now I would just say, I think it's always a good idea. Again, do your best to get your stress under control, start making good quality nutrition changes. I always recommend reducing sugars and grains, getting rid of bad refined vegetable oils and trans fats, and really sticking with good healthy fats like grass-fed butter and coconut oil and olive oil and avocados. And then doing your best to switch from commercial animal products to grass-fed, organic, pasture-raised animal products, making those nutrition changes, dialing in that 12-hour daily fast, and then bumping it up and seeing how you do with a 14 to 16-hour fast on a daily basis. And then, basically see how your body's responding to that. And then from there, use the fasting strength questionnaire to help you understand how your body's adapting, your level of fasting fitness, and if you can push that fast even tighter, because you're going to get more and more cellular healing and cellular cleanup when you push that fast from 16 hours to, let's say, 18, or even some people will do a 20-hour fast where they'll just do 2 meals in a 4-hour eating window. And some people even do just 1 meal a day. And it doesn't mean you have to do 1 meal a day every day, although in some cases, I've seen amazing health results. People losing over 100 pounds,
Wow.
Reversing chronic diseases, diabetes, all different types of conditions, doing what's called OMAD, or 1 meal a day. And I talk about that in the book, but not everybody's going to be able to get there and do that. And so, or really wants to do that. So the book will help outline, exactly when to make these shifts. And kind of, it's like you're trying to lean into fasting to give you the best results, but you don't want to overly, you don't want to be overly aggressive, because you can also get a setback if you do that. Think about it like exercise. I think that's the best analogy. It's like you're always trying to, if you want to be really fit, you got to really challenge yourself, right? But you can also, there's a delicate line between challenging yourself and then also overtraining. And you want to know where that line is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think a couple important points you made were like ease into it, just like exercise. It's so easy to want to just go full bore. I wrote a little ebook about supplement side effects. Same thing. Like if your naturopath gives you 10 supplements, start taking all of them, probably something's going to go sideways, because your body's not used to it. So you gotta ease in. And I think it's also important to note that you're not advocating like extended low calorie, because I think that's where, especially like as women, our cultural training from the 80s is like reduce calories. And I think that when I first started to experiment with fasting, I was getting a little bit of a trap of like, how little can I eat, or like how lean can I get? And that I really didn't want to be in that. So we need to eat for nutrition. You're just advocating eating different times, really.
Yeah,
Basically,
for sure. And really, honestly, like I am a really strong advocate of a fasting lifestyle. I think fasting should be something that you're doing on a daily and weekly basis. You have a whole fasting regimen built into your lifestyle. However, there are certain populations I don't recommend it to. That would be pregnant women, for example. Many pregnant women don't have a problem doing like a 12-hour overnight fast and then eating like in a 12-hour window. For many pregnant women, they do great with that. However, in general, I'm not really trying to be strict with a pregnant woman. They're in a growth stage. Young children, I'm not trying to be strict. My kids typically are doing like a 14-hour fast. So usually eat breakfast at like 9 a.m. and that we usually finish dinner at our house about 7 p.m. So they are doing something like a 14-hour fast, but we don't try to be strict with it with young growing kids. I have twin 5-year-olds and a 2.5-year-old. So they're all in growth stages. But they tend to do it anyways, but we're not trying to be strict with it. High level athletes, if you're like practicing football or basketball for 2 or 3 hours a day, you're going to need more calories. And then people have had eating disorders, right? If you've had anorexia, bulimia, if you've had one of these eating disorders, you should not be making the decision to do fasting. That should be a decision you're making with your counselor or with, a really close friend or loved one that can help hold you accountable, that believes that you're healed enough to take this on and is there to help hold you accountable just in case, you start, again, reverting back into some sort of an eating disorder. So that's key. And then beyond that, when it comes to like extended and partial fasting, I actually have a chart that says, based on if you are underweight, normal weight, or overweight, if your goal is to reduce inflammation in your body, how often you should do one of these fasts, right? For somebody that tends to be underweight, maybe just doing a partial fast or an extended fast once a year might actually be all you really need to do to get really great health results. And then doing some level of intermittent fasting on a daily basis for somebody that, as opposed to somebody that's very overweight, because you have so much, resources in your bank account, in a sense, you actually are going to be able to go longer periods of time or do more frequent intermittent fasting as well as extended or partial fasts. So I go through that. I have a whole chart that helps you understand how often to do these fasts.
Yeah, I like how your book sounds like it's just kind of a coaching program for picking what's right for you. It's just like diet, we're all different. I don't really think there's exactly a one size fits all for diet. So same for fasting, it sounds like. So I have a note to ask you how fasting helps autoimmunity. I also want to ask you, are there some autoimmune conditions? I know, for instance, like people talk about thyroid conditions where fasting is like sometimes not a good choice.
Yeah, actually, I have a whole chapter on how fasting improves digestive conditions as well as autoimmune conditions. And fasting is amazing for the immune system. So one reason is because we have these senescent immune cells. These are older immune cells that, because they're older and they should be cleaned up. However, they're still circulating in our bloodstream. They are hyperactive and they're creating more inflammation and driving up more autoimmunity in the body. And so when we start to fast, our body will actually eat those up. They'll break those senescent immune cells and create newer, healthier, younger immune cells. So fasting is actually one of the very best things somebody could do to downregulate autoimmune issues. Now, we also know that autoimmunity has a lot to do with leaky gut. And so when it comes to leaky gut, you have to think about it kind of like a sprained ankle or a broken ankle. So if you sprain your ankle, you break your ankle. I mean, if you walk on that or run on that every day, it's not going to heal. It's kind of the same thing with leaky gut. We got to take mechanical stress off of it. So good thing is your gut lining heals much faster than your ankle will. And so even just time restricted feeding, meaning doing like a 16-hour fast, is going to take a lot of stress off of the digestive system and really help the digestive system heal. There's been a study where 24-hour fast, and this is done on rats, but it showed a huge increase in intestinal stem cell production, meaning that the intestinal cells, they had a huge release of new, really embryonic cells. And these younger cells, these stem cells, are very stress resilient, which means that their gut lining is going to be a lot healthier and be able to withstand a lot more stress coming from, dietary issues. So that's really promising. On top of that, intermittent fasting has actually been shown to help improve the diversity of your microbiome. So you have this bacteria that lives in your intestinal mucosa. It's called Akkermansia mucinophilia. It's considered a keystone bacteria, meaning that it is associated in studies, many different studies and meta-analysis that are looking at the microbiome. When we find these elevated levels of Akkermansia mucinophilia, it's associated with lower levels of inflammatory bowel disease and autoimmune conditions, and better overall metabolic health. So lower levels of diabetes, heart disease, all your metabolic diseases. And so Akkermansia really does great when we intermittent fast, Akkermansia starts really eating the mucosal membrane of our intestines. And it actually triggers a certain receptor on our enterocytes that make the enterocytes, those are the cells of the intestinal lining, they start to now release and create more mucosa. So it actually increases the amount of mucosa in our intestines. And within that mucosa is an immune cell called secretory IgA. Secretory IgA's job is to help bind and get rid of pathogens in the gut, right? So bad bacteria and parasites and yeast and stuff like that. So intermittent fasting actually helps to trim down the bad stuff and increase the good stuff in our gut, and increases the overall diversity of species in the gut. And, that's a really key marker of overall health, is the amount of diversity in our gut. And the old thought was, in order to have really good microbiome diversity, you need to eat very diverse range of foods. And that does work, right? You can eat a lot of different types of foods, and that's a great thing to do. However, intermittent fasting actually works the best to help improve microbiome diversity.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, and we do gut testing, and I'd say at least 90% of people have deficient mucosal lining.
Yep.
So
yep,
what
exactly.
a simple way, and I want to get back to your book and your resources, but this is why I love DIY Detox. Like, this is free. This is literally free. Unless you buy David's like $15 book, which is pretty affordable. There are other ways to heal us besides supplements and all this. So I just want to share real quick. I put it in the chat and I'll screen share it too. Let's see here. 1 second. David's in our DIY summit, which is coming back out right now. And he's one of the preview speakers, and you can see why. Like, he's a great, amazing speaker. It's really, it's great information. And we talk about fasting as well, maybe from a little different angle. So you can just kind of hear it over again. And then we've got, other great, almost nearly free methods as well. So let me just show this real quick. So if you haven't signed up yet, I put that in the chat, and here's the one you're going to get. One of the few, you'll get right away. Jay is also a great speaker. Ari is such a great speaker as well. So I handpicked you guys, which is my favorites. They picked my speakers last time. I was like, I'm going to pick it this time. We've got this DIY detox guide. We've got now a mold guide that I just came out with, a recipe guide. So you'll get into it right away, and then you'll get the rest of the speakers on February 8th. And we have some new ones. We've got a little bit more on the brain, which is a popular topic for our audience. Some things about immunity with Kieran Krishnan that he's one of our favorites in this community as well. So yeah, I would love for you to just get that exposure. When does your inflammation summit come out, David?
Yeah, it's coming out in May, and we'll start the promotion for that in late March.
Okay.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah, so I'm in that one. I'm really excited. So we'll share that as well. You can see why David's got a super popular website. He's just got a lot of expertise. You can see his brain works too. Otherwise he couldn't be sitting here and giving all this information. So let me share your book. Probably easiest way is just on Amazon to get it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a Kindle book. It's a paperback book. Have you thought about doing the audio ever?
I have not at this point. Yeah.
I like
Maybe down the
audiobooks.
road.
Yeah, it's a little nicer to have a health book, like, with what you can mark up and stuff, but I do like
True.
audiobooks sometimes. So here it is. Just grab it on Amazon. And again, I think knowledge is power, and it inspires you to act. I get the same thing with like coffee enemas and stuff. People are like, I'm kind of curious, but I don't feel familiar enough to actually do it. So when you feel more comfortable, like whether or not, we had great questions today, you're on medication, you're menopausal, you're trying to get pregnant or whatever it is, it sounds like you've covered all that in the book, and you can really customize. So I used to be really resistant to fasting. I've shared with you, because I was just totally one of those sugar burners who ate all the time.
Yeah.
And now I really enjoy it. And it can be flexible too, right? It doesn't have to like dominate your whole lifestyle. I think you can listen to your body. I just like got some kind of stomach bug yesterday, and I was like, I'm not eating. I think my body just wants to work through this for a little while.
Yeah.
So just being able to like, recognize that and not be afraid to not eat, which I think is what a lot of people experience.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, you can fast and you're not going to die, right? Which is a big deal. Like I literally used to think I was going to wither away if I fasted. So.
Oh yeah, me too. 100%. Let me just share your website real quick too. And any other last thing you wanted that we missed?
I would just close by saying, and it's really what I started with. I really believe that fasting is the most ancient, inexpensive, and powerful healing strategy known to mankind. Again, it's something that is built into our DNA. All of our ancestors did it. It's really only in the last 100, 200 years that we've had higher amount, just food has been easier to get, easier to access, right? But throughout the history of mankind, we weren't eating like this. All the ancient philosophers like Plato, for example, he talked about how he would fast for greater mental and physical efficiency. Okay. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, talked about fasting. In the Bible, many of the prophets talked about fasting. Jesus says, when you fast, right? It was a common practice for the Hebrew people. Okay. So all these ancient religions, philosophers, all these people have talked about the benefits of fasting. It's just something that's built into our blueprint. There's a movie called The 300. It was about the Spartans.
Oh, right.
Which were, are renowned, they were from Greece, and they were renowned for their ability, their strength and their resiliency. And these people basically intermittent fasted all day and they feasted at night. So they did a feast famine cycle, which is kind of what I recommend. And they would feast in like a 4-hour eating window in the evening, and they would fast during the day and train. And they became incredibly resilient and strong, and were renowned in their area. And that was not a common practice for a lot of the warriors around that area. But the Spartans knew that this was intrinsically, they knew that they were stronger and healthier doing this.
So fascinating. Yeah. And just because this fasting isn't common anymore, you're kind of sharing it's historically just incredibly common. Yep. We didn't have all these fancy resources for wellness back then. And look around us, right? Like we have an obesity epidemic and inflammation epidemic. So I'm excited for your next summit as well. It's like kind of like, to me, it's like stop the madness. Like obviously what we're doing is not working. Even if you're not overweight, how many people have chronic gut issues, autoimmunity, like so many. So such a powerful tool. I'm so thankful you came on to share with us again. I know everyone's going to be going back to watch this, and I encourage you to get the book. I'm sure it's just super valuable. Thank you again. Thanks for everyone for being here, and I will see you next week. Let me tell you what we got coming up next week.
All right. Thanks so much, Bridget.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye.